Imagine spending 15 days in a room the size of a parking space. No windows, no clock, no conversation. The light stays the same, whether it is noon or midnight. You cannot tell what day it is. You cannot tell how long you have been there. After 15 days, researchers can see changes in your brain scan, the same changes they see after a traumatic head injury.
You were not hit. You were not sick. Nothing physically touched your brain. You were simply alone. And alone, it turns out, is enough.
Right now, approximately 80,000 people in the United States are held in solitary confinement, some for days, some for months, some for years. They are placed in cells roughly 6 by 9 feet. They are alone for 22 to 24 hours a day. They receive meals through a slot in the door. Human contact is reduced to the occasional guard speaking through metal. The practice is presented as a security measure, a management tool, a way of controlling the most dangerous individuals in the prison system.
In the 1980s, a psychiatrist named Stuart Grassian at Harvard Medical School began interviewing prisoners in solitary confinement. He was not looking for political ammunition. He was looking at symptoms. What he found was a cluster of psychiatric effects so consistent across different prisoners, different facilities, and different countries that he eventually named it a syndrome: solitary confinement syndrome. A predictable, documented neurological response to extreme social isolation.
The symptoms followed a pattern. In the first days, anxiety, difficulty sleeping, heightened sensitivity to sound and light. By the end of the first week, sounds that would normally be ignorable became unbearable. Light felt physically painful. By the second week, perceptual distortions. Prisoners reported seeing things that weren't there, hearing voices, losing track of where their body ended and the room began. And by the third week, in some cases, a complete break from reality that was clinically indistinguishable from psychosis. The brain scans came later. Researcher Huda Akil at the University of Michigan and neurologist Terry Coopers at Wright Institute documented what isolation does to the brain at a biological level. In prisoners held in isolation for extended periods, EEG readings showed a slowing of brainwave activity, similar to what researchers see in people who have suffered traumatic brain injury. The brain was not being physically damaged, but it was behaving as if it had been. To understand why, you need to understand what the human brain is built for. Neuroscientist Matthew Lieberman at UCLA has spent his career studying the social brain. His central argument is that the human brain's default mode, what it does when it is not focused on a task, is to think about other people. Not to rest, not to wander, to simulate social interaction, to replay conversations, anticipate future ones, model what other people are thinking and feeling. The brain is a social organ. It requires social input the same way a muscle requires movement. If you want to understand what isolation actually does to the brain at a biological level, not as a metaphor, but as measurable, documented damage, stay with this.
When you stop moving a muscle, it atrophies. The fibers break down. Function degrades. When you deprive a brain of social input, something similar happens. The neural pathways that process social information begin to deteriorate. The systems that regulate emotion, that maintain a stable sense of self, begin to lose coherence. Solitary confinement does not remove a comfort. It removes a biological requirement. The animal research is unambiguous. In studies on mice, rats, and primates, social isolation produces measurable brain changes within days. Reduced neurogenesis in the hippocampus, the region responsible for memory and spatial navigation. Elevated cortisol levels that, sustained over time, damage the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for decision-making and emotional regulation. Researcher John Cacioppo at the University of Chicago studied loneliness for over 30 years. He found that chronic social isolation produces inflammatory responses comparable to those seen in people experiencing chronic physical stress. The body treats isolation like an injury, because neurologically, it is one.
When people are released from extended solitary confinement, many cannot function in normal social environments. Crowds feel overwhelming. Conversations feel impossible to track. The ability to read facial expressions, a skill so automatic that most people never think about it, has degraded. Some former prisoners describe the experience as trying to speak a language they once knew fluently but can no longer access. And the recovery, where it happens, takes months to years. The COVID-19 pandemic provided a massive, unintended experiment. Millions of people experienced extended social isolation, not in cells, but in homes. The psychological effects documented during that period tracked closely with what Grassian had documented in prisons decades earlier. Anxiety, perceptual distortions, difficulty concentrating, a sense of unreality. The cognitive effects of isolation do not require a prison. They require only the absence of human contact sustained over time. What recovers when social contact returns is instructive. The first thing to improve is mood. Within hours of sustained human interaction, cortisol levels drop. The inflammatory markers begin to reduce. Over days and weeks, perceptual distortions resolve. The ability to track conversation returns. Emotional regulation improves. Over months, in many cases, cognitive function largely returns to baseline. The brain does not recover by healing a wound. It recovers by receiving what it always needed and was temporarily denied. We tend to think of other people as optional, as something we choose when we are in the mood and retreat from when we need space. What the neuroscience of isolation suggests is that this is not accurate. Other people are not a preference. They are infrastructure. The human brain requires social input to maintain its basic functions, the same way it requires sleep or glucose or oxygen. Remove them long enough, and the brain does not cope differently. It begins to break down.
Solitary confinement is legal in most countries. It is practiced widely. It is defended as necessary. But what the brain scans show is not a matter of opinion. Put a human being alone for long enough, and you are not managing them. You are damaging them. The question is whether that distinction matters.
If this changed how you think about something you assumed was just a policy decision, that is exactly what this channel is for. Subscribe to Wrong Instinct. New video every week.